Duh. Hey, if you do anything wrong in your life, and I find out about it, I'm gonna try to take everything away from you. And I don't care when I find out. Could be today, tomorrow, 15, 20 years from now. If I find out, you're fucking finished. Who's that? That's you.
Today, I'm going to be talking about cancel culture. So what is cancel culture? Cancel culture is the phenomenon where people are shunned or boycotted for doing or saying something that is deemed bad. I'm guessing you guys have heard of cancel culture before, whether it's through big cases like Harvey Weinstein, or maybe Joe Rogan, or maybe Jordan Peterson, or countless other names that we will get into later in this video. But the point is, this is a heavily discussed topic online, especially within the podcast and comedy space. And there's a lot of negativity towards the ideas surrounding cancel culture online. And a lot of this negativity I actually agree with, but the conversation has always seemed a little bit one-sided to me. And what I wanted to dive into today is there anything good about cancel culture? Is there any redeeming qualities to it? And is it even effective at all? And to start this video, I wanted to play a clip for you guys that I saw while researching this video. This is Joe Rogan and Sam Harris talking about Mark Wahlberg's cancellation.
You got these guys who are now having their careers destroyed for having dressed up, in blackface or in a hood for Halloween or whatever it was. I mean, I think this. Like Mark Wahlberg is an example of this. Right. I mean, he was running around just beating people senseless, right? And for avowed racist motives, I believe, when he was a teenager.
Well, the guy lost his eye.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, and I think that was a Vietnamese guy he attacked, but I mean, he was just doing truly indefensible things. I mean, that was a very different time. I think if all that stuff was being discovered about him now, there may be no way back.
And also, people have to recognize that there's some things, but you can't retroactively instill today's ideas of what constitutes racism on 1985. So if you were in high school in 1985 and you dressed up as Mr. T, right? I don't know if that was racist back then.
Okay, so let's break this down. We have Mark Wahlberg, who when he was 15 threw rocks at a group of black children and also called them racial slurs on several different occasions. Then 2 years later, he beat up 2 Vietnamese men, one who was a Navy veteran, and called them racial slurs as well. Now we have Joe Rogan and Sam Harris talking about this like they're on Mark Wahlberg's PR team, and talking about how it's going to be so hard for him to have a career after all of this, framing him as the victim. But I must be missing something, because this story actually had a resurgence in 2020, and Mark Wahlberg still had 6 movies that he appeared in since. So what are Joe and Sam so upset about? There's virtually no impact to his career, and if anything, maybe public perception slightly shifted against him, but I feel like that's kind of justified when you thought this was a guy who wasn't a racist, who turns out to have done some very racist things in the past. Now, I'm not trying to say that he should be canceled. All I'm saying is that I don't think his cancellation did anything to hurt him. But again, why is Joe Rogan and Sam Harris talking about this situation so much? Why are so many comedians, podcasters, news people, influencers, all talking about cancel culture like it's this huge deal and something that we have to watch out for?
This is how ridiculous it is. Think about the meaning of cancel culture. So you're saying that my life is over, I can no longer survive or provide for myself? Cancel. I don't know, figure it out. You're canceled.
So I want to fully analyze this subject. And before going into all the discourse that is being had, I wanted to kind of independently look at the pros and cons of cancel culture through my own eyes. Let's first look at the pros of cancel culture. I think across the spectrum, we can all agree that some people actually do deserve to be canceled. Think about people like Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly. We can all agree that if you murder somebody or rape somebody, there should be some backlash to that. There should be some sort of recourse that you get for doing something so terrible. So cancel culture should exist in some capacity. I think also one of the best parts about cancel culture is the way that it democratizes our media consumption. Before, when there was sexual assaulters and rapists and bad people who were doing horrible things and saying racial slurs behind the scenes, they were able to just get away with it because the media execs were in charge, and we as the audience didn't have a choice but to just watch what was on TV. Now we live in an era that we can actually threaten these big execs and these huge companies to make a difference. I think having that power in the people's hands is a really good thing, and taking away the power from the corporations is an even better thing. There's also a variety of cancellations that are less contentious by I think most public standards. I'm talking about environmental cancellations. People are flying on jets, stealing money from the poor, big corporations who are cutting costs that lead to oil spills, trains being derailed. I think it's a no-brainer to everybody that this is terrible, and advocating against these big companies that are doing horrible things is undoubtedly a good thing. But now let's move to the cons of cancel culture. The cancellation of artists and big media figures doesn't come from their actual audience, it comes from Twitter. You might hear this being called the woke mob or the social justice left, but in reality this is a loud minority of angry Twitter users who are dominating this whole cultural conversation. So yes, it is unfair that this small amount of people on Twitter have this much amount of control over the companies. I think the biggest criticism of cancel culture is where the line is drawn. So when I said one of the pros of cancel culture that we can all agree on is that if somebody murders or rapes somebody, they should be held accountable. But what about when somebody says something racist 10 years ago? 5 years ago? 3 years ago? How can we judge how much somebody's character has actually transformed and how much they've changed from past to present? None of us want to platform active racists or sexual assaulters, but how do we know that they've changed? I think when people criticize cancel culture the most is when there was something that happened a long time ago, or it's something very mild, but then they get dragged on Twitter and then get a lot of media attention for doing something that was maybe more minorly bad rather than career-ending bad. And the line with cancel culture isn't consistent. And some people get no reaction for some of the horrible things they do, but a major reaction for other people for even small things that they do. Chris Rock's new comedy special is literally called Selective Outrage, making a joke of the inconsistencies with cancel culture. And the biggest argument that all of these cons of cancel culture come down to is that it ruins the career of the person getting canceled, and that is unjust. If it wasn't for the fact that this ruined careers, there would be no conversation.
I just thought that whole era was really fascinating to watch people like just trying to just sort of ruin people. Like I understood the beginning of it when they were going after these monstrous people, but then it just became this like these ticky-tack misdemeanors bullshit, and they would just burn them down. It was like a Frankenstein movie, like they were all coming up the fucking hill. So,
but wait, rewind. Is cancel culture even effective at all? Are these people's careers getting ruined? After seeing that Mark Wahlberg's cancellation didn't really even affect his career, I wanted to delve into a bunch of different celebrities and their cancellations to see what it did to their careers. So I did some research into a bunch of different celebrities, and I figured out that the people who are getting canceled really aren't getting canceled at all, and there's little to no effect on their career. Now, before I go into this list, I really want to remind you that I'm not commenting on how just the cancellation was. I'm not commenting on if they deserve to be canceled. I'm not commenting on how bad the thing that happened was. All I'm saying is, did this cancellation actually affect their career? So let's get into it. Joe Rogan was so-called canceled for spreading COVID misinfo and saying the N-word on past podcasts. His podcast is just as relevant as ever. Shane Dawson has been canceled countless times for being creepy to children, jerking off on his cat, making racist jokes, pedophilic jokes, and time again he takes off time and then comes back with millions of views. Louis C.K. has jerked off in front of several women without consent, and 5 years later, he's selling out Madison Square Garden. Matt Damon was canceled in 2021 for being homophobic in the past and using the F slur. He has made 3 movies since, all to rave reviews. Will Smith is back and well after slapping Chris Rock on a public stage just 2 years ago. He just starred in the movie Emancipation. Kevin Hart has said homophobic comments in the past, leading him to step down from the Oscars. He released a special a year later and continues to appear in Hollywood movies. Dave Chappelle complained about his own cancellation on his Netflix special. Let me repeat that to you. Dave Chappelle complained about his own cancellation on his Netflix special. Now, I thought the special was really funny, but I just thought it was a little bit ironic that he's complaining about being canceled while being on the biggest stage in the world. Elon Musk has settled a lawsuit with a flight attendant that he allegedly exposed himself to for $250,000. The story was in the news cycle for 1 to 2 weeks. J.K. Rowling has been cancelled multiple times for making anti-trans comments. However, the new Harry Potter video game is breaking numerous records within Warner Bros. Games, and she is receiving profits from it. Jordan Peterson's career has only excelled through his controversies. Only months after slamming Elliot Page for being trans and calling out plus-size models for not being beautiful. Yes, he tweeted that. He joined the Daily Wire and continues to be featured on some of the biggest podcasts in the world. Kanye West has gotten away with saying slavery was a choice, publicly harassing Kim Kardashian, making a music video depicting the murder and body disposal of Pete Davidson, repetitively sabotaging and insulting Taylor Swift, and so much more, with his career going unscathed. Even throughout his Hitler-loving controversy, he has the highest amount of monthly listeners he has ever had. Let's not forget how long it took for Adidas to drop Kanye throughout all of his controversies. It took him literally taunting them to finally get them to drop him.
I could say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Now what?
Now, I can't speak to the impact that these public cancellations has had on these people's personal lives, but their careers are all just doing fine. Now, let me repeat, you do not need to agree with why these people are getting canceled, but the fact is, these cancellations are not doing anything to their career, and in some cases, they're actually helping their career. But you might think that I just cherry-picked a bunch of different examples of cancellations that didn't really work out well. What about people like Alex Jones and Andrew Tate, who literally had all of their platforms removed from all of the biggest media sites, including YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter? Well, not Twitter anymore for Andrew Tate.
Now, what's funny about this is that eventually cancel culture does hit everybody. Eventually, everybody gets canceled, so it comes for everybody. Eventually, the alligator eats you, because the mob always needs fresh bodies.
Another big argument from the people who are perpetuating the idea that cancel culture is a big deal that we have to worry about is that it could happen to anybody. But Andrew Tate and Alex Jones are not just anybody. And let me take you down the reasons why Andrew Tate and Alex Jones got banned off of all these platforms. Alex Jones spread the misinformation that the survivors of the Sandy Hook shooting were crisis actors and that they were faking it. He and Andrew Tate have repetitively violated the policies of a bunch of these media platforms. But that's not even a good argument for it, to be honest. When it comes down to it, YouTube and all these companies really care about money above anything. People like Andrew Tate and Alex Jones got to a level where it's more expensive for them to stay on the platform than it was for them to be kicked off of it. There's too much risk of brands leaving the platform and people feeling unsafe on the platform and switching to another one. They want to have the least loss of total users, which means being as least offensive as possible, which explains all of their policy conditions. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a real risk that 1 or 2 companies control our entire voice on the internet. But I don't think cancel culture will be the mechanism that Facebook and Google end up enslaving us with. And we should be getting mad and upset about how much control that these corporations have over our lives. But we continually get redirected by these big companies to get mad at the right or the left for controlling your voice. No, it's the big company that you should be getting mad at. It's Google. It's Facebook. So no, this can't happen to just anybody yet, and not because of cancel culture. But if you just listen to popular comedians, podcasters, and influencers, you would believe that cancel culture is working and everyone needs to watch out. You might have also seen stories about a white man who was cracking his knuckles at a Black Lives Matter protest, but then was unjustly fired later because his employer thought it was a white power symbol. Stories like this are meant to make the public think that cancel culture and woke culture are right at your doorstep and you're at risk of being fired. But I really think these stories are far and few between because I think most people are fine in most of their workplaces saying what they want to say. And this is what brings me to my main point of this video, which is the gap between popular discourse around cancel culture and reality, which is that cancel culture is barely effective at all. If you just listen to the discourse around cancel culture from all these podcasters and comedians, you would think that everybody is going to get fired left and right, and that we're all going to be out of jobs because we can't live within this woke world. Even companies trying to be woke in their public statements will have you believe that we are moving towards this scary woke world. But really, companies are just trying to be as least offensive as they possibly can be. And sometimes they actually get even more attention for their brand and use it as an ad campaign to be extra woke. But if you just listen to these people, you would think that if you made a rude comment 5 years ago, or if you said something online that you probably shouldn't have, that they're going to come and get you and they're going to take away your livelihood.
Cancel culture is real, it's insane, and it's growing exponentially, and it's coming to a neighborhood near you.
If you just listen to these guys, you would think that we are entering the woke world, and that comment that you made 5 years ago, or something stupid that you wrote online, is going to be brought up against you in the court of public opinion. But when are we going to realize that this isn't happening? We've had this conversation for the last several years and nothing has changed. We haven't entered the woke world. Yes, there's these public media cancellations, but they're not doing anything.
Finally, new rule, liberals need a stand your ground law for cancel culture, so that when the woke mob comes after you for some ridiculous offense, you'll stand your ground. Stop apologizing, because I can't keep up anymore with who's on the shit list.
Bill, what woke mob? Are they attacking you? Are they coming down the street with pitchforks and torches? Are they hurting you? You do realize you're talking about deplatforming on a platform, right? Doesn't that kind of dismiss your whole argument? You also know it's a bad sign when people are clapping at your joke instead of laughing. Now, this group of people would like to have you believe that 95% of cancellations are working. But the argument I want to make to you today is that the number actually sits much closer to 5% of cancellations working, if that. There's no actual data about this, but let's look at all the examples I mentioned. Jordan Peterson, James Charles, Louis C.K., Joe Rogan. Some of these people's careers have actually grown since cancellation. Why? Because the Twitter army, the loud minority that's heading this cancel culture war, have moved on to the next person, and the general public actually didn't care in the first place. Or didn't care enough to change their viewing habits or actually do anything. If you ask any random person about Mark Wahlberg, do you think they're going to talk about his past scandal or just talk about his movies? Mark Wahlberg's a good actor, and that's all that people really care about. Unless you are doing something so heinous or repetitive, or there's a criminal case, most people don't care. That's why you only see the permanent cancellation of people like R. Kelly or Harvey Weinstein. Let's talk about politicians. In September of 2019, Justin Trudeau got exposed for wearing blackface 18 years prior. 1 month later, he was re-elected as Prime Minister, and 2 years after that, he was re-elected again. In October of 2016, an old tape of Donald Trump saying, "When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab him by the pussy. You can do anything." And I'm sure you know this wasn't his only controversy at the time. He received tons of backlash at the time. And just 2 months later, he was elected President of the United States of America. So what is cancel culture actually doing? If cancel culture isn't actually ending careers and destroying lives, then what is it actually doing? Why are people so up in arms about it? Why is this such a big topic in our public media cycle right now? Like, what is the actual one material bad thing that cancel culture is doing for our society? Nothing. Twitter users are idiots. This loud, woke, whatever you want to call it, Twitter mob are a bunch of idiots, and everybody knows this on the right and the left. So just stop listening to them. Stop using these people as a gauge for actual public perception of people. Do you know how small Twitter's active users are? There's the same amount of active Twitter users as there are users of Reddit. But we hold these guys on the highest pedestal imaginable. I don't get it. Listen to what Bo Burnham says.
But no comedians are being, thrown in jail. They're getting lit up on Twitter maybe a few times. They go through,
Comedians like to use the argument that it's free speech. I can say what I want.
The great thing about freedom of speech, if an arsehole is being an arsehole, you've got the right to call him an arsehole.
Yes, but if I call you an asshole for calling him an asshole, that's also freedom of speech. It's a different story if you're getting doxxed or harassed in person, But for the most part, if they're being mean to you online, that's them exercising their free speech. So we have seen people time and time again come back from cancellations unscathed. But the bigger question to me is, despite cancellations not working or not being effective at all, why do podcasters, comedians, and media personalities love to pretend that it does work? Well, it could be a number of reasons. It's a lot easier to be the person who's being unjustly attacked by the woke mob than it is to be somebody who makes jokes at other people's expenses. They can be funny jokes, but stand by your jokes. Don't hate on people for hating on you. I think a lot of people are upset at woke culture and upset that they get backlash for jokes that they didn't used to get backlash for. And the biggest repercussion of woke culture is cancel culture and the idea that people's careers are being lost. So that's the boogeyman that they point to as the reason why this woke culture is terrible. But remember that when careers aren't ending, all they're doing is just getting mad that people didn't like their joke. Nobody's perfect, and we all know that. The whole woke culture is really just with companies that are trying to offend the least amount of people. In order to make money, of course. But is anyone else so bored of comedians starting up their stand-up special by talking about cancel culture and how they're not allowed to say these things anymore, and then proceed to say the things that they're not allowed to say onto a big platform? How long do we have to go of seeing people not being canceled to realize that this whole cancellation thing isn't actually working at all? But comedians love cancel culture. Ricky Gervais put it best when he tweeted, "PC culture isn't killing comedy, it's driving it, as it always did." I'm fine with using cancel culture as a comedic tool or have it be a podcast topic, but I fear that the overuse and the hyper-focus on this cancel culture is just polarizing us more and more. So why should you care that cancel culture is so ineffective? I think the main reason you should care is that cancel culture is just another movement that is being used to stoke the fire of polarization around the world. Cancel culture is just being used as a tool to drive a wedge between the left and the right. And this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because all the language that gets used on media frames it within the woke left and the canceled right. It makes it less about us versus the corporations that are controlling our lives and more about us versus each other. So I don't care if you're left or right or what your political opinions are, but let's bring hate towards the people who really suck. The corporations that control our lives. I think one of the most positive things that has come from the cancel culture movement is that even though it may not be entirely effective, it has made people who were racist, who were saying slurs behind other people's backs, now have to be on their toes. Now they have a bit of fear, even if it's not justified, for being canceled today.
I think before all this stuff happened, I was quite reckless.
Yeah.
With my life and with my privacy and with my ego and with my everything. I was just like, hey, everybody, look at this. Look, this is the way I look at my life before, was that I just didn't think there was danger in the world somehow. So now I do, and that's changed me a little bit. So that's opposite of like no fucks given in a sense, but that's more about the way I live my life and the way I plan my life now.
Now, I don't want to present this as completely black and white, though. Cancel culture is definitely not a completely positive thing, but I think it's important to remember that this is a new movement that has a lot of growing pains it has to work through. And false cancellations, unjust cancellations, unequal cancellations are all unfair and a very unfortunate side effect of this new movement that we find ourselves in. Now, I don't think cancel culture is going away anytime soon, but here's some ways that I think cancel culture could improve. Twitter is not a good space to represent what the actual general public thinks about any given issue. The reality gap of what cancellation actually is needs to close. People need to realize that these cancellations aren't as effective as some media figureheads might make you believe. Unjust cancellations should be addressed. I think the podcasters who are talking about canceling and how horrible it is are addressing this one head on. But cancellations are here to stay. And I think that scrapping them only takes away the power from the people and gives it back to the corporations. And these corporations are money hungry and will continue to do bad things if they are left unchecked. Now, cancel culture is new and in its infancy. My goal of this video is not to pick a side on loving or hating cancel culture, but to take a look at what it actually is, the bad and the good, so we as the public can figure out together what our best next steps are. My name is Jonah, and thank you for watching.